Hi, guys, and welcome to Paws, Reflect, and Heal with Dr. Randy. Another episode of our podcast. I'm so glad you can join us. I always want to remind you that we will be able to take all of your questions, comments on our website, and that is drrandypetvet.com. That's drrandypetvet.com. Feel free to contact me. There, you can leave me a message. There's also a phone number that will leave a message. That would be great. The podcasts are brought to you by Paws Veterinary Center here in Tucson, Arizona. Paws is a transformative approach to veterinary medicine where we do integrative medicine, and that's often what a lot of our podcasts are about. If you listen to us or see us on Facebook, on X, on some of the other modalities, but you can always find these podcasts on drrandypetvet.com. So welcome to the show. I remind you that this show is dedicated to pet wellness and longevity, where I can help your pets live healthier, happier lives so you can too. And everything that we do is about not only just longevity, but quality of life. With me today, I'm very, very excited to have my buddy, Paul Blaushild. He's an incredible dog trainer. We've done 10 years of radio show together. We had a lot of fun doing that. We were just reminiscing about that and miss those days. But obviously, this media is a much easier way to get you information and help you out. And so I want to introduce Paul and let Paul tell you a little bit about himself, how he got into the world of dog training and where that evolved for him. And then we're going to talk a lot about specific training issues, exercise issues, socialization issues, because that's of critical importance for your pets and fits the integrative model really nice. Also, just so you know, if you see in the background, we have Flash joining us. That's my Devon Rex cat. She will be around, I can see, helping us. Don't mind her coming in and out of the picture. Paul.
Yes.
Meet everybody.
Hello. I am really happy to be here. I want to thank you, Dr. Randy, for inviting me on. I've missed the communication that we used to get throughout the years together on the radio show. I get to talk about myself.
You do. I know you don't like to do that too much, but we're going to force you to do that.
And how long do we have?
We could have a lot of time.
All right, so the long story is I was born in the Bronx, so you may catch a New York City accent here and there. But I've been out here in southern Arizona, about 42 years now. I have a passion for dogs and cats and horses, of course, but the dogs really got me when I was much younger. I was a troubled youth back in New York City, getting a little too much antisocial with people, and found that I communicated with dogs and felt more comfortable around them than anything else. For a while there, I had a border collie as a young man, and boy, did that dog teach me a lot. And that's how I got my start, is from trying to figure out not what my father told me to do, because back in those days, it was punish the dog, sometimes physically.
Yeah, yes.
And I remember one time when my dog chewed up my brand new baseball glove that was still wrapped up with a ball in it, getting it broken in, and the dog chewed on it, and my father told me to hit the dog with the glove.
Yeah.
So I learned from the border collie better ways of communicating, and it just grew from there. I was 15 years old. By the time I was 20, I was already starting to work with dogs and finding that people just didn't know how to deal with them. As far as housebreaking, socialization, proper playtime, food, all this stuff. I came up with an acronym for what I like to incorporate into every relationship that an owner has with its dog, which is K.N.E.E. K-N-E-E. And it's kindness, nutrition, education, and exercise. And generally, if you put that into your relationship, you're going to have a really good dog. All right, because all they're looking for is communication and a better understanding of what the rules are. All right, because I don't consider dogs domestic animals until they are trained and educated. Don't go to the bathroom in my house. Don't chew on my glove. Don't bite people that you don't know. All different sorts of behaviors that in a dog that hasn't been domesticated are going to create lots of problems. Very much so one of the reasons why there's so many dogs that are turned into rescues. Hopefully they're turned into rescues and animal shelters and such, is because they make some mistakes, they act like a dog, and the owners just don't know how to take care of it.
And I remember when we were on the radio show together, looking up the statistic that said 60% of dogs turned in 2 years and younger to the shelters and humane societies had no training whatsoever, no socialization.
No.
And it's gotten worse through COVID, as you know.
Oh, gosh, yeah, because so many people went out and got pets.
Right.
Because they were bored of being, closed in and such, and they felt they had the time to devote to it. All right. But the whole idea is learning how to raise up a puppy so that it has confidence in you as the owner, confidence in itself. And there's so many things you could do pretty much right from the minute you get them. All right. You talk to babies while they're still in the womb. Well, you can talk to your puppies as soon as they're born.
Sure.
Handle them, and start your relationship on a very early basis of actually teaching.
Sure.
All right. So, I've worked with so many dogs from the same litter on occasions that they're so different as they grow older because of the environmental at-home influences on them. So you can really shape what you want. If you want a more active dog, I've trained service dogs, a little bit less active dog because of what jobs they have to do. So there's a lot to start with when they're younger. So I got into training when I was about 20 years old. I was selling, puppies out of a pet store.
Uh-oh.
Didn't know back then what these puppy mills were doing.
Sure.
And the people would come back to the store a week or two later complaining about the mess or the destruction, or that the puppy wouldn't walk on a leash, or so many things. So I got my education because of the needs of people that I sold puppies to.
It was on-the-job training.
There it was. And there were books there. And I had learned to read, one of the few things I learned in school. And the training was applied during my lunch break or my dinner break. And I noticed that it was working really well. People were really happy about it. So I went out and started introducing myself into jobs and such, going around the country a little bit, and eventually landed in Tucson back in the late 70s and started Adobe dog training. I have worked with people over these last 40 years from other states. I've been known to travel to do work. I've had dogs shipped to me to be worked with. But again, the local community has been just wonderful and supportive of me for all these years.
Were there any people in your development early on that were writing or talking or trainers that you identified with at that point, or was it really more of what you were picking up during your process?
It was more learning on my own.
Yeah.
And again, the reason why is because so many trainers that I started to work with to learn, they were working with dogs back in the 40s and the 50s. And again, there was a lot of isolation and a lot of physical work on the dogs. And as I worked with some of these people, I realized, well, it'll take longer, but I could do it this way instead.
Sure.
And it just happened. For years, I would get questions from new owners that I hadn't talked to about, well, are you going to break my dog's spirit? And I would say, well, no, don't you like his spirit?
Right.
I could do that, but I don't want to do that.
Right.
And I said, no, of course not. Well, what method do you use? I said, I don't know. Your dog will tell me how I can communicate. There's 100 different ways to teach a dog how to sit.
Sure.
I'm not going to punish the dog for not learning my way of teaching sit. I'm going to learn all 100 ways and keep going, keep working, and not punishing the dog again until I've communicated with the dog.
So most of it is through positive reinforcement.
It's not a lot of tidbit training though.
Okay.
I was never given tidbits as a child. I didn't do things for money.
Right.
As a child, allowances and things like that, $5 clean up your room, because I would have been asking for $5 in advance.
Right.
And then I would have raised the price.
Right.
Now it's gone up to 10. But I did work for my father's approval. I wanted his respect. All right. He was a very firm man, but a gentleman at the same time. And that's how I apply the dog training, is that if my dog doesn't prefer my touch and sweet voice, I don't have it right now, but I can
You can make it that way.
imitate a sweet voice.
Sure.
As its highest level of praise and satisfaction for doing a job, more so than a tidbit.
Right.
I will use them when it becomes necessary. A lot of times, because people have partially trained a dog or hit a wall and they can't get any further along, sometimes we have to, bend the rule a little bit, but, and then we'll use a treat. If it works, why not?
Sounds great. So I know the question that comes up a lot is puppies and the right start for these puppies. I think one of the things that's really important that we talk about is, one, not removing that puppy from the litter too soon. What I see in my practice or have over the years is that we see a lot of situations where puppies are not allowed to be around their litter mates, not getting the proper correction from mom, and at 4 weeks or 5 weeks are given to some other family where they're missing that critical time. I mean, I've been under the impression, and maybe you can tell me if this is right or right, but really about 8 weeks is the proper
Correct.
time to start looking at placing.
Definitely about 8 weeks. Now, sometimes you get pressure from that breeder that wants to get rid of the responsibility. They already have your money, so, there can be somebody letting dogs go too early, because for their mental health, they need to grow up understanding, when mom says no, it's no. And when dad says no, it's no.
Right.
All right. And not to pick on its litter mates. Rough play is fine, but, you don't want to see a dog at 4 or 5 weeks of age that has been very aggressive towards its litter mate going home.
Sure. Makes sense.
I had an experience with that one
Sure.
time.
Sure. Yeah, tell us about that.
I had picked up a Rottweiler puppy from a breeder who I had done some training for, and we did a little bartering. And I went and looked at the litter, and there was about 8 puppies in the litter. They were 5 weeks old. One puppy was Rottweilers. Sometimes they'll have a little white on their chest. They're not really supposed to, but
Right.
and this puppy had white on its chest. The rest of them didn't, and it was, pardon me, beating up all the other puppies. And it was serious. So I picked that puppy, and she couldn't believe that I would pick that puppy. I said, if that puppy goes to somebody else, it's going to end up being put to sleep. It's going to bite. It's going to be destructive. It's going to be hard to deal with. Let a trainer have it.
Sure.
And that dog lived to, I think it was 11 or 12 years old, never bit anybody, but growled at everybody.
Sure.
All right. And the growl was just talk. It wasn't even a warning growl.
Got it.
You know, the dog just had that type of temperament. You could see at a very young age. It needed to be removed.
Right.
All right, before it influenced too much on the other puppies in the litter. But for the most part, litters get along fine. And, you know, there's all sorts of different personalities. I've done Zoom calls and helped people pick puppies out of litters that are in other states and stuff. And been very successful at it because, again, you can develop. It's much better than do modification, right? If you raise a puppy up and teach it what personality is best, is much better than waiting like they used to years ago, 6 months, a year, and having to break some bad habits.
And that's an important question that I think a lot of our listeners ask also is, what about the idea of puppy classes versus individual training? I know you have, some preferences. Talk a little bit about that, Paul.
Well, okay. So there's different ways of going about it. Who needs to consider cost? Who needs to consider time? Who needs to consider results? All these things will go into it. The idea that you have to train your own puppy is not really true. All right. It's no different than sending a child to school.
Right.
And they're learning from some teacher that's really a stranger.
Sure.
All right.
Sure.
As long as when the child comes home, you go through the lessons and you have communication with them, you'll get all the benefit of it.
So you're on the same track, because I know you get a lot of puppies that come and dogs that come to you for training, and that's a typical 30-day stay, or
about a 30-day stay. But again, I don't ever go by a specific time.
Right, you're really looking at the.
I'm waiting for the dog to let me know that it's peaked.
Sure, makes sense.
And that further training maybe should take place months later.
Sure.
Or that the puppy is pretty much peaked and is not going to do anymore.
And then the follow-up usually for you is you're spending quite a bit of time with the owner explaining exactly what your training socialization has.
I somewhat join the family.
Yeah.
And I try to stay in touch, but after so many years, and it gets pretty difficult for me to be making all those calls.
Sure.
So I always encourage people, I don't care if it's a year from now or 2 years from now, if your dog digs a hole, call me, because I was responsible for the training.
Sure.
And that's the difference between my training and you taking dog trainer lessons to train your own dog.
Yeah, that makes sense. Let's take a break for a second and tell our listeners your phone number so that if they have any interest in contacting you, I don't know, is there an email or website email that you have? Or
I have an email address of Paulie B Dog Trainer, Pauly, B as in boy, dog trainer @gmail.com, or they can reach me by phone if they really want to get me quicker, which is area code 520-429-5133.
Please feel free. And also, if you have any specific questions or any issues on contacting Paul, don't forget drrandypetvet.com. Please send any further questions or comments to that site, and we'll make sure that Paul gets that. We're going to take a quick break so that we can set up episode number 2. I hope you've enjoyed listening to Mr. Paul Blaushild, great dog trainer, great guy. We're going to have some more information about training, socialization, and exercise coming when we pick up the right after the break.